480 BC, Spartan king Leonidas stands alongside a few thousand elite soldiers against an army of over 1 million men. Why would the man do such a thing? Why would he choose to fight so hard when death is certain? When he knew the result was inevitable? Why did he take up sword and shield and stand shoulder to shoulder with his own men between two walls of rock to funnel the endless number of deadly obstacles in his path? The man was already the walking dead. What point was there in standing against the torrent thrown against him and his brethren? Why even bother trying at all? Why not just fall on his own sword right there and end it? Huh? Because they were Spartans, that's why. Now some of you might be saying, "Gumbercuman Randy Savage, you said people need to depend on groups to know who and what they are, never learn to know themselves at all, and end up wasting their lives waiting to be told what their life should mean to them." And that's true. One who is told what to stand for is only as strong as the one who tells him. That means it is better to be the one who decides to be the supreme glory of all that is human creation, the individual. And as long as we're talking about God, I've got something to say to you if you believe in him. I've got the same thing to say to you if you don't. We're all in this life together and war is hell. We are the Spartans and the Greeks and the Athenians that stood together against the Persian army. And the attack from the Persian army is the struggles we face in our lives until finally, at the end, victories and defeats alike forever lock in the essence of what kind of person we were and what kind of life we lived in a perfectly complete story of who we were and what mattered to us while we were alive. When we stand alone, we do not stand for long. It does not matter how strong one is if one can never depend on anyone else for anything which matters. What kind of person looks at the world and says, "I can do this by myself. I don't need help from anyone. I can do it. There is nothing I can't accomplish on my own." Only a fool would say those words and claim they're honest. Either we're put here together with the unlimited potential of being made in God's image with a destiny to realize that heaven and hell are created here on earth by our own wants and desires and choices. And while there are many things we cannot choose, we always choose not to do evil things in the name of good. What a useless thing. It would be much better if you did good things in the name of evil, because at least you're doing the thing that happens and saying the reason that makes it not count. And what if we are here by random chance? Well, you have worse trouble, because for better or worse, all of the people here are the only hope we've got, and we're on our own as far as outside help goes. So I ask, if you recognize we are on our own, is the right choice to step in and play the role of God because you don't believe in him and there's no one else above you to help us and make that decision for us? Or do you try to do something even better than that? You decide. A wise and honest person will always come to the same conclusion. Individually, we are only as strong as ourselves. Together, we are only as strong as the weakest among us. If we're going to stand a chance, then all of us need to get strong together while there is still time to make something of this miracle called life. And that is why we are here tonight, together, in this organization. And the fans who support it become a group who identify as warriors. We decide, not the group. We decide who we are. And there is not one person here fighting on this stage who does not eat and breathe and shit and sleep without the mind of a fighter. The world is harsh and confusing. There are battles waged against us as countless men and women blindly seek to destroy each other instead of blindly seeking to care for one another. And innocent bystanders who are doing their best, trying to live their best lives, are caught in the crossfire of destruction. And what separates a warrior more than anything else is their faith in the power of fighting back. No matter the odds, until there is victory or there is death. And if these men must fight from such a state of mind, then that would make this a very high stakes proposition. To them, their very life is on the line in a never-ending war against all that pushes against self-improvement and self-empowerment. To fight effectively, they must train. And if one is to live each day in a fight, what better place to train than with those who attack you and wish to teach you safety than one who will attack you and wish to see you fail? It's time for the rules of tonight's contest. Both fighters are engaged in a free-for-all, no-holds-barred battle of wits and free will with the single driving passion to convince the other person they have a deeper understanding of truth than their opponent. At the end of the match, the fighters will be judged on the following criteria. Number 1, how well do they understand their own position by explaining it clearly? Number 2, how well do they understand the position of their opponent when the opponent is being clear? Number 3, how much does their own ego stop them from trying to find the better answer? This is not about being right or wrong, because this stage can only be reached by those who realize no one has all the answers. And when no one has all the right answers, all that is left is a better answer. They fight, you decide. This is a competition, and here is the metric for victory. In one corner of the universe, we have our first veteran fighter. Having been through one match, he already knows better than anyone who has not been what to expect. He is one of many Michaels, but he is the one and the only Miggity Mike! Oh! How much growth will be seen since his last appearance? Will he ever close the holes in his empathy which allow minor jabs to slip through? Will his superhuman strength of logic connect information from point to point, casting a wider net than his opponent can escape? Has he used his time between matches wisely? Michael, Matthew, get out of here. You're not fighting today. Michael, declare your intent to participate. Are you ready? He fights. You decide. In the other corner of the universe, we have a mental speedster. If his opponent, Miggity Mike, were a gorilla, he would be a much faster gorilla. But on this stage, speed is not enough to achieve victory. One needs strength as well. And while the strength of ideas and the strength of intelligence can serve a fighter well, does he have the strength which matters most? The strength to put the best answer he can find above anything else. Philip, declare your intent to fight. Are you ready? He fights. You decide. Tonight's match is set for a time limit of 30 minutes. Fighters are limited only by how much they can effectively communicate within the time and how effectively they can spot weaknesses in their opponent's arguments. Who will drive the discussion more until both of them reach agreement? Will agreement be reached before time runs out? Do either of them put their own ego ahead of the truth? They fight. You decide. The topic for tonight's event is, what role does the ego play? And what role should the ego play when one is searching for higher truth? Let the match begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. Matthew, I'm sorry for yelling at you. I don't know why. It's supposed to be Michael. Michael, it seems you have the advantage because Philip is asleep at the wheel. There is nothing stopping you from proving you understand your own position, and certainly one can understand one's own position without ego. At least a claim of ego. If Philip does not step in, I will be your opponent. Are you ready for that? But I think our new fighter has some nerves. And we wait. I think I may be having to get this going. Philip, what's the matter with you? Have you gone soft? Have you gotten cold feet? I think he's having technical difficulties. That's too bad. A genius should be able to figure out how to join an event. Michael, get started. Buy your friend as much time as you can, because I'll be facing you if he does not show up. Very, very quickly. And Michael takes the advantage of his sleeping opponent. Ego is more or less an extension of self-confidence. It would be unreasonable to say that ego is absolutely not a part of the search for truth, but I do think it's a very fine line before it actually interferes with the quest. Well, Matthew, since you're not a part of this, I'll have to step in and fight. Michael, let me introduce your opponent. We met him last time someone didn't have the guts to show. I would say that ego is a sense of self, right? So how can you do anything without a sense of self, right? You have to exist as your own person to decide what the truth is. So if I'm looking at Mike, he's trying to say that it's unreasonable to say that ego is not a part of the search for truth, but that's weak. That's a weak statement because the search for truth is impossible without ego. And Thomas steps in very quickly. It looks like he's been itching for a chance to fight. And he says to Michael, "You are too soft. Why would you limit this to such a thing where it is only optional? How can one do anything without the force of ego behind it?" Mr. Tom says. I would have to go on to say that you don't have free will if you don't have ego. Because how can one make a choice if they don't have the will to do it? And Matthew, fuck me, I'm going to have to start punishing myself for this. It's going to happen. And watch, I'll show you how. And Matthew, we can't have that. Michael is a competitor who is respected. He deserves to be called by his name, Miggity Mike. That's minimum. And Michael takes advantage of the announcer's confusion and fires again, and identity is crucial to the searcher. So, if the identity... So yeah, we got to the same point then. Ego is essential to the searcher, but then how do you get to the point where you say, I have the truth? How much balls would it take to look at yourself and say, I'm correct, and there is no information that I see that can make me feel like I'm incorrect, or there's no information that I could learn that would make me feel incorrect? That doesn't work. And Tom fires back with one of his old hat arguments. It's an argument he makes quite often. He questions the very nature of knowledge itself. Tom, that is a move you use quite often. Is that because no one has given you a satisfactory answer? Is it because the move has an exceptionally high rate of success? Or is it because you can't think of anything better to say, and you say, well, what about the thing you're assuming to make your argument? Tom is using his own ego to search for truth. Isn't that a bit hypocritical? Does he beg the question by saying that you can't know what you don't know? Or is he merely following the logic where it takes him? And Michael fires back. Identity is crucial. It does take confidence to reach an answer, or to even go looking for it. The line exists where you think you have it, and is laced with assumptions of the ego. Yes, Tom and Michael, Miggity Mike, are advancing this discussion rapidly. So not only have they agreed that it is present, not only have they agreed that it is essential, and Philip is here. Philip has apologized. Philip, would you like to take over and begin the conversation? No, he wants to read. That means he intends to participate. Philip, you're in. Begin. Michael, take advantage of Philip's tardiness. And that will give me a chance to focus on the thing that I love more, which is getting better at announcing these. And it's difficult to get better when I have to play both parts. So Michael says, not only have you to decide that you've found it, but you also must have the ego to know that you don't have it. Isn't that just an extension of ego in a different direction? How can you know that you don't have truth unless you have decided you do not have truth? And surely making a decision like that is a direct expression of ego. How can it not be? And Michael gives a psychology lesson. Perhaps that is a good thing if he feels his opponent needs a little bit of help getting caught up. The ego interferes when one is looking for information leading to the answer, and it causes assumptions to be made, running the risk of faulty information. Yes, that is true. How often have we met someone who expresses with us and against us that they are correct and that the entire world is wrong, when we can plainly see that they're morons? At least we think they do, and perhaps that's our ego, and we're the morons, and who can tell? No one, that's who. You can't tell unless you talk to each other and give a damn. And Philip finally takes his first swing. Let's see how much he can redeem himself. 20 minutes remain. You have 2/3 left the amount of time to impress me, Philip. He says ego, as I understand it, is the part of consciousness that we can willingly maintain at balance to achieve a defensive component to our identity. With our ego, all is in fact lost to anyone that does not foster an ego. If I understand the point that he is trying to make correctly, it seems to say that if someone does not possess an equal ego to our own, we won't see them. In fact, if someone doesn't have an ego of their own, they won't see us. And Philip is showing his compromise. Philip is showing his cockiness, yes, taking swings at the announcer while he's in the middle of a mental battle. I guarantee you that Michael is not making such a mistake. How do I know that? Because he's already made that mistake and has been chastised for it firmly. Michael says it sounds like we agree on the presence of ego being important, but he doesn't think it should exist in equal parts. And Philip says he has to close it to give his replies. All you need to do is listen, Philip. You type and listen. He says the egos don't have to be equal, they have to be balanced. That is a tricky statement, Philip. You may understand that perfectly, but have you used words that your opponent can understand clearly? Have you presented your case in words that the common man can say? And Michael takes time to show off his advantage because he is firmly ahead still, having gained significant momentum at the beginning of the match, and says that he multitasked during the last match, admitting to some sorts of highway shenanigans that he did while in a parked car, I must assume, because I would never encourage my fighters to admit to dangerous habits in the middle of their matches. And Philip takes the time to heart Michael's opponents. He is using emotes when he should be using logic. Philip, I need you to focus. Do you have first debate jitters? And Michael fires back again, yes, taking control of the reality and pushing it to say, must one be balanced with each other? Or must they be balanced with oneself? You decide. Must you balance yourself with someone unbalanced to reach them? Must you be incredibly balanced to reach yourself? Where's the line? How do you look inside your heart and know when I am being reasonable and when I am being an ass? Michael fires back. Finally, the first battleground. I'm not sure I can agree. It's fairly difficult, if not impossible, to balance some egos out there in the world. He says it's impossible because he can't do it and doesn't know how it can be done. Michael, that is a statement that is dangerous to make, Miggity Mike, because only one person needs to figure out what you have not, and your entire argument crumbles to ashes. Michael, you're in a precarious position. Let's see if Philip has that answer or if you can get away with your gambit. He says that's where the removal comes in and says you can remove an ego if it is bothersome. Philip, what do you mean? You have placed the reality but given no follow-through. You've set the stage without giving it direction. Michael will take that direction, I assure you, and run with it faster than you can finish your point. We need typing. Philip, you're a speedster. I've seen you type faster than this with me. How is it that I struggle to respond to you fast enough, and Michael has you backed into an existential corner? And he fires again, his text completing slightly before Philip's, so his point is read first. Yes, the only person with the ego can fully remove it. Others cannot. It would be a free will violation. Michael says that you cannot remove another's ego against their will. They have to decide. So Philip said, how does one remove said ego without removing the person? Yes, Philip responds that when you care about the ego and forget about the person, you lose the person. Michael, your empathy. I warned you, your empathy was weak. Yes, you forgot that the person is what matters, not their ego. Their ego is just a thing about them. This, you said it yourself, their ego is not them. And Philip takes advantage, so then how does one remove said ego without removing the person? Free will. It's just a step. He says that you have to do it. To do it, you recognize the problem and find a solution. Philip is firing fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, admittedly, everything is connected. So he cuts him some slack this time. He shows his opponent mercy, which is one of his signature moves. Yes, pity and mercy. Philip raises his arm in triumph by cutting Michael some slack. Wow, what a hit! I did not see that coming. Out of left field. What a clever argument. Michael, you gotta get up. Respond. Say something. Get yourself back in the game. Philip continues his pummeling. I hope Michael's internet connection is still good. I say that it is because this is a major whopping he's receiving right now. Free will violation would require total free will in the first place. Yes, he brings in variable free will, which says we can only understand the choices that we understand we have. And that when someone understands they have more choices than another person, it can be said that that person has more free will than the other. And if someone has sufficiently advanced free will, they will see that someone is trapped by a thing they cannot see, and one does not have to change the person. One only has to reveal the choice, and then the person is capable of making the choice that they could not make before. And that is the death of ego. Michael says, another person can't remove one's ego, but can check it. perhaps neutralize it. And Michael very wisely concedes ground by rephrasing Philip's statement in words of his own that very closely match this reality. Yes, it is true you do not have control of a person. Yes, it's true that you can influence them using the power of empathy by giving a damn that they exist. That is the way. That is the solution to every problem people have with each other. Give a damn about them, not their problem, not what they can do. Oh, and Philip is stunned. Yes, what happens? He got the argument. He's the dog that caught the car. His entire goal was to trip Michael up. Maybe he's used to the amateur leagues on Facebook where a statement like that would get someone to leave. Philip has mentioned he doesn't dust off often, and I think he's showing a lack of stamina. But no, it's not a lack of stamina. It's a lack of confidence in his own success because Michael has agreed with him. And now he moves on. Yes, his moment of stun wearing off. It can be removed through medical means. Given it's not a violation of testing standards. But that's still in the test phase. Yes, there was often a time where lobotomy was a fine, tried and true treatment for medical disease of the mind. Yes, if there was something not right, they took out part of your brain. They removed part of your ability to perceive the world around you, limiting your choices to ones they could predict and control. So if the reduction of confidence, if the reduction of consciousness, if the reduction of consciousness is the result of the loss of your ability to perceive what is around you, if you can make it low enough that you can predict, you can raise it high enough to predict as well. And Philip says, if one can neutralize it, how is this possible without affecting the person under the ego? And Michael says, can we assume we're not talking about major brain surgery for the purposes of this discussion? And Michael uses one of his weapons, the red herring annihilator. The red herring something. His names were not nearly as catchy as the ones that I gave mine, like the power of the dot and the Mega Man fighting reserve. But he says that it is a red herring to consider the very small percentage of cases where lobotomy is a factor. And perhaps it would be more useful to steer the direction towards one of more practical application, and it seems that Philip was waiting for this. Yes, perhaps Michael has fallen into a trap again of empathy, where he assumes lobotomy was the only path that Philip was talking about, instead of asking Philip for what he meant clarification-wise, or assuming that he could have made this similar comparison right here and taken advantage instead of taking a victory lap. Philip again scores by saying it doesn't take a lobotomy. A simple drug manipulation is enough. However, the medical view of ego is too much for this conversation. This was a battle. He's pulling stops here. Yes, Philip finally has woken up. You have 10 minutes left. Will it be enough? If you run twice as fast for 1/3 the race, who's the winner? And was Michael going at full speed when it started? And are both of them going the same speed now? Who was faster when they started? Michael says, nevertheless, I think we assume two people arguing aren't going to take a physical measure to remove the ego. It seems like Michael's never been in a bar fight. Michael's never needed to throw a punch to make his point. Perhaps Michael's never had one thrown at him. Oh yes, it's possible to remove an ego. It's possible to remove an ego with extreme prejudice, which is why it's extreme prejudice to try and remove an ego by treating someone as a function of their intent rather than a human being. Yes, people are not. They're groups. They're people. And Philip says, no, I'm just giving real options, not hypotheticals. A little jab. Michael, why don't you bring this back into the realm of the slightly believable, he says. Whether he's right or whether he's just goading Michael to break and be impulsive, you decide. Michael says, to the topic, it seems like he has decided. He decided to fight. Ego brings confidence by definition, but too much leads to faulty assumptions that can botch the search for truth. I think the key is keeping the ego on the outside of the search, using it only to digest the findings as they come. In essence, keep an open mind. And Michael, do you think that I am not capable of such a thing? In fact, I would say because I'm pointed in the right direction, I am far more capable than someone who lacks my conviction. That is my point and my commentary. But perhaps I am not what you'd consider normal. Perhaps I am not sane. Perhaps you shouldn't listen to a word I said, and if only you could do that without me making so much goddamn sense all the time on the matters where we produce our own unnecessary suffering. And Michael says the argument does not equate to a brawl, Gumbercules. Not you. He's taking swings at the announcer again. Although who can blame him, because right now my ego is the biggest one in this room. And that's not my fault. I wish they would do better. Fire back. Take advantage. Make your points with extreme prejudice, or it will not be enough. I'll make them for both of you. And Philip says, fair enough. I thought I was being rather forgiving. However, ego is what's making me feel like I should be forgiving. What if it happens if I should be forgiving if I had no ego? So Philip says that the ego is not a bad thing, nor is it a good thing. It is simply a thing, and it exists on a spectrum which can be found to be in balance. He's stolen a play out of my book. That's my argument. I use it all the time. I taught it to him. And for that, I'm very proud, Philip, to see you use it in a match. It's almost like I'm fighting there with you, but that wouldn't be fair. I'm only fighting in the ring with you if you use my ideas. And Michael says, is it ego that's making you feel that way? And Philip says, no, not ego, but a governed one. But an ill-governed one. It could be pity. Yes, he is saying that feelings of pity are also an expression of ego. And it seems to make sense because both drive intent. Pity sounds egotistical, Michael says. Forgiveness sounds more empathetic. So what are you saying with that, Michael? Oh, he doesn't have to. Michael throws out a red herring of his own, and Philip takes the bait. Michael on the ropes, being tossed this way and that, gains control of the argument in the only way that he knows how, by making Philip make a choice. He presented Philip with free will he didn't know he had. He used more free will than Philip in this moment. Yes, he did, because Philip was given a choice and he made it quickly, giving up the control of the conversation. There are 6 minutes remaining in this match. Philip says pity and forgiveness are too similar. That is one of his catchphrases. Be careful, Michael. It sounds like he's spent quite some time developing this order. Michael, are you walking into a trap? Let's find out and see what Philip says. You decide. On the surface, he would agree, but where they come from is far different. He thinks that ego comes from one place and pity from another. I have a hard time seeing your point, Michael. It seems like different flavors of ego. In fact, what would propagate pity more than empathy? If you had genuine empathy, you would feel more pity. Yes, more honest pity. And Michael, isn't your core problem always been a momentary lapse of empathy? Perhaps it is you who is blind to the reason behind that, and Philip would hit you over the head with it. And now that I've seen it, so will I. And Philip says possibly. He's saying the ego can't maintain an empathetic view. What Philip is saying is, can a person choose to care? He strikes for the throat of Michael. Can a person choose empathy? Can they, Michael? Yes, this is your boundary. This is your limitation. This is the one you struggle with the most. Can a person choose to find someone both unacceptable and care for them deeply at the same time through force of will alone? I say they can, because I do. "4 minutes. This was not a close match until recently. Now this is a very close match. With less than 4 minutes remaining, the victory is up for grabs. Who will seize it? They're both tired and have both rocked each other back and forth, but I gotta say, I'm not used to seeing Michael get hit this many times with his own logic. He says that ego isn't a core component of empathy. He's making a statement and putting his own ego behind it. So I'm going to listen because I choose to care about you, Michael. He says empathy comes from a place of love. And if anything, love makes both ego and empathy. He creates a new definition. Will Philip question that definition or accept it? What do you say? You decide. Is love both ego and empathy? Is that where the intent meets the desire? And you produce love, or are all of them different things? Philip says I could agree to love, possibly creating those things. However, they also might be able to create hate. And hate is something he abhors. And Michael once again gives Philip a red herring. Yes, he again creates a choice for Philip, and Philip takes control of that choice, making it and accepting Michael's reality as his own. Well done, Michael. Again, something worked and you used it. Philip, when will you learn that making a choice is optional? Unless he thinks he's got the perfect answer, and this is all part of his trap. I'm not so sure which it is. Philip, are you doing rope-a-dope? Are you luring Michael in with 2 minutes left? Are you trying to end it all with one decisive blow at the very end? And he says, is love really all it's meant to be? And is ego responsible for what should be protection against the evils love can commit? Yes. What about the evils that love can commit? If love is powered by ego, and evil is also powered by ego because both are components of love, then how can you separate them? And if you can't separate them, you must admit they exist in positive and negative form. Perhaps as pity, or not. You decide. I am not the decider. This discussion is the decider for these two men. I decide for me. You decide for you. 1 minute. Both fighters prepare to make their final arguments. This battle has given me things I did not expect or prepare for. And I am pleased with all of it. Michael says love is far bigger than one might think. Love starts from within, and that forms the foundation of ego. Love also expands to others, forming empathy. So Michael says that love is the first step, and one must love themselves to develop an ego. And once one has a sufficiently developed ego that does not depend on the intake of ego from others to sustain it in the form of validation and simple group identity, then one is capable to take that love for the self and show it to others in a way that makes them feel connected. Finally, he says hate is the anti-love, which can poison both the ego and empathy. And Philip says, yes, I postulated earlier, all is connected. But by love, he doesn't think so. Philip, ego is another, he says, and time has expired. Philip, how was your time management? Did you have more after ego is another? I hope that you did. Because it's time for me to decide. There are many things for me to consider if I'm going to be a fair judge of this. Many things which exist in balance, one does not validate the other. All are true. On the question, how well they understand their own position by explaining it clearly. It's a difficult question. This question is more one that you would ask a dealer of fine art if a Rembrandt is better than a Picasso. They are two different things, and both were exquisite tonight. If I had to choose, strictly on that criteria and nothing else, I choose Philip by the smallest margin. However, all I said was I chose what you did met that criteria. And all of it was met for the time you were here. But for 1/3 of the match you presented no opinion. Therefore, the point is split between the two of you. Michael, you won on a technicality 1/2 point. You can do better next time. How well do they understand the position of their opponent when the opponent is being clear? Philip. And Michael, you'll get no mercy on this one. Twice he beat you over the head with your own empathy. Not that you didn't have strikes of your own in different weak areas of his, but one of the criteria by which this contest is scored is the ability to anticipate, decipher, and intend the empathy of your opponent. And Philip was your better. Number 3. How much does their own ego stop them from trying to find a better answer? Well, you spoke. You were both equal, and I would have scored the match as such. Both of you showed a firm desire to reach the truth. However, ironically, in whatever manifestation of ego you can apply to such a thing, Philip missed 1/3 of the contest and had no ego and asked no questions and sought no truth. He did not participate. And therefore, the point goes to Michael, making him the winner of tonight's match. Goodbye.